In this video, we're going to explain how to remove the top panel from your flare. I'll preface this by saying if your flare is plugged in, unplug it now before you attempt any repair up here. Throw the breaker if you cannot get to the top of your back of your range to unplug it, because we're going to be removing this top panel, and everything behind here is going to be energized 220 volts AC. You do not want to be poking around or playing around in here until all power is killed to your flare. All right, welcome back. Our flare is unplugged from the wall, breaker is thrown. Now we're going to remove this screw here on the top of the trim and the corresponding screw on the other side. Now that we've removed our two Phillips head screws, we're going to go ahead and just wiggle this trim right off and set it aside. Okay, we've got the trim piece off. We just lift this up, pull it towards you. These lids run in the two channels here, so you can actually slide back here. This is pretty handy when you don't have good visibility. You may be down a little bit lower, but this just goes ahead and pulls out and comes off. And on most flares, there will be glued a copy of your wiring schematic here. A lot of times these are obscured over the years. The glue turns brown, as you can see right here, and they may be darkened from the heat. You can find these in the Flair section of the Facebook site as well, but a lot of times these will be too dark to read. This one's not too bad, and this is a 1960 Flair, so this is a one-year diagram. Okay, we're back. We've removed the top panel from the flare. We're actually standing, this is the back of the oven and this is the front of the oven. So you all will probably be looking at it from this perspective out here looking in, but I wanted to give you a top view so that we can kind of go over the main parts. Each oven is a little bit different. This 1960 has a little more complicated clock, so we'll go ahead and start here. These are the arms and springs, trays that control your arms for your oven. So when you lift an oven door up, you'll notice what happens with the springs here. Same for the large oven here. So these are your spring trays. This right here is the start capacitor for your fluorescent bulb, this long one that's at the front here that illuminates your burner drawer when it's out. Sometimes this will go out if your fluorescent bulb is flickering. You can try to change the starter. It simply pushes in and twists and come out like this, and you can find those at a hardware store. Almost any hardware store will have them. This here is the clock. This is for your big oven. This is the thermostat for your big oven. And all these thermostats, if you'll notice, have a copper wire right here. This is a malleable, bendable copper wire. This is what snakes down through the top of the oven and goes into your oven. It's a thermocouple thermostat that reads the temperature in your oven and sends a signal back. So this is the big oven. This is the broiler grill feature here, this switch here. This is for your left oven, your small oven. This one right here is your meat tender, so you can set that what temperature you want your meat. That's usually attached to the temperature probe that's in your oven. Moving over here, we have the infinite heat burner. This is the rear burner here, and this is your small infinite heat burner. Then you have your large 8-inch burner right down here. Then you have your your rear 8-inch burner here. And then this big switch down here is your 6-inch speed heat. A lot of these ovens have had their switches and burners converted over to infinite heat because this speed heat switch is notoriously faulty sometimes. It draws a lot of current and can burn out very easily. This is your lamp switch right here, and the part numbers for these burner switches in particular are right up underneath here. It's like the switch is upside down. The part number for these is on this bottom surface here, which is good because as you can see how dirty this is over the years. These part numbers are probably pretty nice and clean being hidden. So there's one up underneath this switch, up under this switch, up under this speed heat switch down here, and also up under this switch here. And these are your indicator lamps, one here, one here, one here. This over here is your fuse. This is connected with these black wires to your speed heat burner. This is the fuse for the speed heat. And these are the insulated bulb sockets. This one right here and this one right here. Those are the ones where your bulbs screw in on the top of your oven. Okay, while we're up here, it's kind of hard to see, but this and this are the terminals coming out of the top of your broiler. So there's a wire going to this terminal and there's a wire going to this terminal. These are your broiler wires and these are your broiler insulated blocks. Directly below this is the broiler element, and we'll show you how to remove this in a later video and test these to make sure they're good. There is also one, we're not going to be able to see it because it's kind of buried back over here, but there's another one for the other oven, and it is located up underneath this spring tray. So this 1960 model is kind of a complicated model. The springs and trays in the 1961 and 2 and on run this way. So they're going to run front to back, not side to side, and it's much easier to do maintenance on the 1962 model. Some of these hard areas to reach were remedied in the following years. One more thing to point out, we're going to go back right over here. All your flares are going to have this main connector. These are jumpers. So these jump the outer two most terminals together on the left side and the right side. When you install the rotisserie, you'll be removing these jumpers, and the rotisserie plug for your rotisserie motor plugs in right here. The motor will end up sitting right here, and if you'll come straight back with me over the top, your rotisserie motor will go right down here. The switch will go in this hole and the gear will go in this hole. But you'll need to connect your rotisserie motor to this connector right here while removing these jumpers. If we remove one for you, that's what it looks like. If you're not running a rotisserie, or if you remove a rotisserie from your flare, you'll need to put these jumpers in. If you look at the end of this connector, if you can see those two pins right there, what you do is you just put your jumper right on in here, and it just sits right there. We had another flare carcass, so I thought it'd be a good time to show you some of the stuff what might have been hard to see in the 1960 video there. If you'll notice, these are the springs, and this is the arm bar. These are the springs on the newer models. So where the 1960 had springs laying here, trays blocking everything, the later models remedied that. These are the only springs that are in this, and they hold the oven doors, allow them to go up and down just like this. So you can see how much simpler design this one was. On all these models, you'll see this bolt right back here and right back here. And there's a hole right here, and there's a hole right here, which is accessed by removing this panel with these Phillip head screws. This just comes off. Tightening and loosening these bolts will tighten and loosen these springs and consequently adjust your oven door spring tension. So if you raise your oven door and it sags back down, you raise it back up, it sags back down, go ahead and tighten this bolt from the back, putting more spring tension, which will hold your doors in the up position. If your doors are too stiff and it's hard to pull them down, reduce the spring tension by loosening the bolt, and it'll allow your oven doors to come down a little more gently. These are also your oven detents right here. Sometimes we've had folks, these are broken. So these little spring detents will break off, and then there's nothing stopping the oven doors from being held closed. This is basically being held in the closed position like if you were baking. So just wanted to show you how much cleaner the later flares are. These holes right here are for your broiler insulators that stick up that we showed earlier in the video. That's one of the wires that connect. There's another wire that connects there. The same goes for right here. These are where your broiler insulators stick up. These are your insulated bulb holders. The holes right here for the large white ceramic things that your oven bulbs are in. And that kind of gives you an idea of a later model flare that's a little bit easier to service, a little bit easier to get to some things. This is the start capacitor for the fluorescent bulb. We saw that earlier in the 1960 video as well.